What is going on, YouTube? This is the Pringles Man here, and today I'm going to be reviewing my top 10 worst SpongeBob episodes of all time. SpongeBob. Do you remember the Golden Ages, which was seasons 1 to 3? Man, I wish I was alive to see that. But no, I had to be born in 2007 when it was the bad age of SpongeBob. But, SpongeBob actually had some bad episodes that I want to review about. So without further ado, let's begin. Number 1 on this list is Yours, Mine, and Mine. When this episode first came out, I had actually no problem with it until people reviewed about it. This episode really points out the fact that Patrick was being a jerk for the whole episode. So here's what happened. SpongeBob tells Patrick to order a burger, Krabby Kitty meal, comes with 2 patties, but then throws a temper tantrum about not getting a toy. And then he says, I want my money back, and then he rips off his SpongeBob for not sharing the meal that SpongeBob paid for. This episode of the Pringles Man actually has to be 10 minutes long. So if you guys actually want to talk about it in the comments below, go search up on YouTube SpongeBob SquarePants, Yours, Mine, and Mine full episode. Number 9. Squid Baby. What's worse than having to see Squidward being humiliated in front of the whole town? Oh, I know. Let's turn him into a baby and humiliate him even more. At the very end, he actually wears a diaper that he just pooped in. How classic of you, SpongeBob. How classic. If you guys want to go check out this episode below, talk about it in the comments, and I'll review about it in another episode. If you guys want to go check out that episode, go SpongeBob SquarePants, choose an episode, full episode, okay? Got that? Okay. Number 8. Stuck in a ringer. SpongeBob gets stuck in a ringer, and what does Patrick do? Glues him in forever. What happens when he tries to stand up for himself? The whole town gets mad at him. And what solves the problem? What gets him unstuck? Crying. And then at the very end, SpongeBob goes, I guess crying solved your problems after all. Really? Number 7. The Splinter. Oh, SpongeBob gets a splinter. This won't be a big deal. Oh my god. I remember this episode now. He gets a splinter, and you get to see a close-up of it injecting into his thumb. And for the whole episode, it just gets worse and worse. He dips it into deep fry, thinking it'll feel better, but it doesn't work. Calls Dr. Patrick for help. Dr. Patrick. Your friend will not help you, only make things worse. He just pushes it in with a mallet and dumps garbage on it, which makes it purple and swell even more. And what solves the problem? Mr. Krabs takes it out. But confetti comes out. Yay, it's all better. Then water and pus comes out, turning back into the normal thumb it is. Now that part was actually pretty satisfying to watch. Number 6. Model Sponge. SpongeBob thinks he's going to get fired because Mr. Krabs says, oh, we'll have to let the little guy go. So, SpongeBob decides to leave the Krusty Krab, and yeah, it doesn't really turn out so well. He goes to audition for a commercial. The director strips him naked, cleans a toilet with him, but then SpongeBob leaves in anger, humiliated. He doesn't get the job, so he goes over there. He goes back to the Krusty Krab and begs Mr. Krabs for his job back. Number 5. SpongeBob, you're fired. Now, this episode was just about SpongeBob being depressed after getting fired because Mr. Krabs fired him over a nickel. a nickel. Mr. Krabs fired him over a nickel. Nickels are only worth 5 cents. And he fired him over a flipping nickel. How original, Mr. Krabs. How original. I think Mr. Krabs just made it to my top 10 worst characters list. Number 4, I think. One course meal. This episode actually makes people feel bad for Plankton after being scared to pieces by whales. You see, Mr. Krabs dresses up like Pearl to scare Plankton because he finds out that Plankton is afraid of whales. But what happens? He decides to commit suicide by laying flat on the road. This is another committing suicide thing, but he was doing it for real. The episode, the one where Squidward says, "I can't seem to get happy," was just a joke on suicide, but this one was the real deal. But who wins at the end? Mr. Krabs, as always. Now, this episode was good and bad. But this episode is called Patrick Man. Patrick decides to be a superhero after being depressed for not finding a job. So, he decides to be a superhero called Patrick Man. But instead of being superhero, he be super villain. Because he goes around making people's lives worse, gets Mrs. Puff arrested after trying to free someone from a car, a locked car, and destroys people's meals, saying it was part of an evil plot, and just making other people's lives worse. But on the other hand, it was pretty funny watching him struggle being a hero at the very end, trying to stop the dirty bubble, which eats SpongeBob. And I actually thought it was a pretty good ending. Mr. Krabs says, "I think you need to use your powers one last time," and hands him a broom. And then Patrick says, "What's this?" That made me laugh out loud. What number are we on? Number 2? Number 2. Okay, number 2. Don't Look Now. Don't Look Now wasn't a funny episode at all. This episode was just about, instead of Squidward torture was at the very end, but throughout the beginning and middle of the episode, it was SpongeBob and Patrick torture, and that's rare. Squidward was torturing SpongeBob and Patrick after being so scared of the Fisherman 3, which basically pulls fish out of the water. So yeah, you can imagine it not being funny at all. They get naked by saying, "I don't think I can dye in my underwear. Here, dye in mine. Oh, let's trade." That wasn't really funny because they were in the nude together and they didn't even mind. Sometimes I wonder if SpongeBob is gay or not. But before we get to number 1, I like to give some honorable mentions. Now, these episodes are good, not bad. Sandcastles in the Sand. Sandcastles in the Sand was about SpongeBob and Patrick using their imaginations out of sand. And it inspired me to do that the next time I went to the beach. Are You Happy Now? Are You Happy Now was just about SpongeBob ditching his happy character all the time to his serious, thoughtful character back in season 3 and 2 and 1. Patty Hype. Patty Hype was a pre-movie SpongeBob episode, and I thought it deserved to be on the list because SpongeBob ditches the Krusty Krab like he should and starts his own restaurant called Pretty Patties. The Two Faces of Squidward. The Two Faces of Squidward was about SpongeBob accidentally smashing Squidward's face into the door, making him handsome. But then he realizes that being handsome is bad because people start to crowd his house. And, yeah, it's just a really good episode. I have a ton of more, but I'm running out of time, so without further ado, here we go. The by far worst SpongeBob episode there is you better get your slacks on for this, because this is the number one worst episode ever. Okay, here we go. The number one worst, most evil, most intimidating SpongeBob episode there ever was is called A Pal for Gary. Now, this episode wasn't really an episode. It was just about SpongeBob worrying about Gary being at home all alone. After when you actually see Gary being happy being alone. He has his cowboy hat and watching Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones reference. But SpongeBob buys a dog, which is basically a monster fish in this episode, who tries to eat Gary. Poor Gary. And at the very end, Gary ends up saving SpongeBob's butt. Even though when he finds Gary being eaten alive by the monster, he goes, "Gary, you put Puffy Fluffy down right now." That's right, he named the dog Puffy Fluffy. Plus, he stole it. After when the lady was telling him about keep it away from cats. Cats do not like these animals. Keep them away. But this episode is just horrifying to watch because this episode is Gary torture. You see, as soon as it grows, it eats all of SpongeBob's food, almost eats Gary alive, eats all of SpongeBob's pants, eats everything in the house, and almost eats SpongeBob and Gary. And when he leaves, SpongeBob still doesn't see that there's a monster right there. This episode makes SpongeBob feel so out of character that whenever I see this episode, I'm switching to Cartoon Network. Even though thinking hopefully that something else good is on. Now, if you guys like these episodes, I respect your opinion, but I just can't see the fact to like episodes that I hate. But if you like any of these episodes, be free to comment down in the comment section below, telling me what's your top. Tell me in the comments below what is your top 10 worst SpongeBob episodes. Hell, even tell me a few honorable mentions, because I couldn't really name a few. So guys, subscribe, like, and comment, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!